The wind blows fast past his face as he carries his lover in his arms. The man hurried across the cold metal floor, each step echoing in the fractured iron walls. "I must hurry," he screamed in his mind. "Oh, Aunt Tia, please be home." Wait. He continued to run. The view of an assortment of homes came closer and closer to him. Their run-down and dilapidated appearance was as unwelcoming as ever. Yet this was the place he had to be. Just as he was nearing the entrance to this neighborhood, a tall figure moved to block his way. He tried to move past the towering, mechanical, apathetic being, yet his movements were copied, sway to sway. "I don't have time for this." "Name." The apathetic being asked with its deep, choking voice, one the man never liked. "Come on, you know me. Please, I need to get to Aunt Taya. She's the only one who can help Nashia." The man shouted now, looking directly at the face of the apathetic being, its face cold and unmoving, devoid of any and all emotions. "Name," it repeated. "For God's sake, she's going to give birth any minute now." The apathetic being tilts its head towards the man. Its cold and soulless eyes meet his, causing the man to flinch. "Name," it repeated once more. "Arg. Flint," the man responded, clutching his fist. "Code," the apathetic being asks. D7 Purpose of visit. "I am here to see Aunt Taya so she can help my lover in labor." For a few moments it simply stayed silent. Not a single movement escaped its body. You would be forgiven for thinking it was never alive in the first place. Then the apathetic being lifts its head and says, "Permission granted." "Yes!" the man exclaimed, and rushed past the apathetic being. But its dark tainted arm blocked his way. "What?" The man lets out a gasp. "Name!" "What are you talking about? I told you already." "Name! It's Flint!" The apathetic being turns its head sideways to face the man. However, its lifeless eyes land onto his lover instead. "Name!" "Ah!" the lover screamed, tightening her grip on the man. "Yo, you mean her?" Her name is Nashia." The apathetic being pushed the pair away from it and lifted its other arm, pointing it straight at the couple. The man stared down the gun barrel in the place of its hand. A tube connects the arm to its back where a viscous liquid lies, one the man knows all too well. The dark liquid dripped from the rim of its barrel as if it was almost eager to be released. The man's hand began shaking rapidly. "Name?" "My name is Nashia," said the lover. An empty silence followed. To both the man and the lover, it was the most tense moment of their lives. The apathetic being stood still, not making a single move. Then it slowly pulled down its arm and continued to look the lover in the eyes. "Code." The lover looks up to the man, who simply nods his head. "It's 18U wide. Purpose of visit. To see my aunt so she can help me in labor." The apathetic being finally tilts its head back up, and after a brief moment it replies, "Permission granted." It then moved aside to let the couple in. The man wastes no time and darts right past the apathetic being and into town. The man sits idle in an old wooden chair. His hands clenched together and his body was sweating bullets. Each drop of his sweat rang like bells on the metal floor. "Oh, there you are." An older woman came from inside a building. "You really should have stayed by her side, you know." "Yeah. I'm sorry about that, Aunt Tia. I got flustered, and when the blood came out, I... You know how I am with that stuff. I probably would have just messed something up if I..." "Stayed," said the man. Sigh. "It's fine, dear. Just try to be a bit tougher for her if there's a next time," said the older woman, rolling her eyes. "It's really not a good image for a man to leave his beloved during childbirth." "I'll try," said the man, moving his head to look at the older woman. "So is Nashia okay? Is the baby okay?" "Everything turned out fine, dear. Nashia resting in bed with the child who is completely healthy, surprisingly enough." The older woman put her hand onto the man's shoulder. "Now don't you think it's about time you see your child? And don't worry, I cleaned up all the blood for Mr. Hemophobia." "Really? All right, I got... Tea time, tea time." A small, stubby-looking machine arrived in front of the man and the older woman. It had tracks for feet, a cylinder that narrowed at the top for a torso, small and thin metal tubes for arms, and a cute maid apron it wore. Its head was the same, though, lifeless and static just like the apathetic being. Would you like some tea? It is good for promoting proper health and digestion. The maid moved its right hand, which held a teapot, to its left hand, which held a tray with teacups ready to serve. Thanks for the offer, Potts, but I'm gonna have to pass, said the man. Well, I would like some. In fact, can I get 2 cups? Said the older woman. Sure thing, madam. The maid poured tea into 2 cups on the tray, and the older woman took them into her hands. Be sure to return those cups to me after you're done with them. You can either scream at the top of your lungs to alert me, or find one of the return bins to dispose of them. Of course, if you happen to run into my friends, you can return it to them as well. I will be off now. The maid wandered off out of view, still blabbering about tea time. All right, let's get going, said the older woman as she shoved the teacups into the man's hands. Huh? Aunt Taya, why are you giving these to me? Said the man. Well, I think it's better if you offer to share a cup of tea with Nashia. Come along now. The older woman got behind the man and pushed him forwards. What? Okay, I'm going. The man got inside the building, carefully holding the teacups and walking with wide strides. The building was made of black bricks and nothing else apart from the occasional wooden doors. Here we are, said the older woman as she opened a wooden door that was brittle and well used. It was plain with no fancy engraving. Now go knock yourself out in there. The man stepped inside the room. There he saw his lover in a rickety old bed staring out into the distance through a window. In her arms was their child resting soundly as she cradled it. Her eyes were half closed and had bags under them, but a soft smile was on her mouth. The man stood still there for a few moments, opening his mouth to say words that he couldn't find, until eventually the lover noticed him and gazed her eyes, now wide open, towards him. Want some tea? It has no sugar? Huh? Said the lover as she squinted her eyes. Okay, look, I don't know. Aunt Taya wanted me to give you tea for some reason, said the man as he placed the teacups onto the floor next to the bed. Well, I do like tea, but I think there's something more important for us to talk about first, said the lover as she lowered her eyes onto her child. Right. So are you all right? I'm all right, Flint, really. Now what I wanted to ask you is, what should we name him? Said the lover as she lifted a hand to pat the child's head. Oh, well, wait, you're not mad at me? Mad? Why would I be mad at you? Because I left you while you were screaming and pushing the baby out. Oh, you did? You don't remember? I don't really recall much of anything while I was giving birth, said the lover, staring onto the ceiling. Even still, I wouldn't be mad at you for that. I know how squeamish you are. Ah, you're always so considerate, said the man as his cheeks turned a bright red. Besides, getting worked up over something like that isn't worth it. We have enough problems as it is now, said the lover, as she stared back out through the window. The building they were in was deeper in town, and the other buildings obscured the view of it, but she could still clearly see the sea. Its death-black waters that spanned to her knowledge. The entire earth stared back at her, only bringing all the memories of those she had lost to it. The lover then looked up to the familiar view of towering, twisted metal spires that went as high as the sky. The spires may not bring death with them, but their pitch-black color doesn't exactly create a comforting feeling. You know, do you ever think that this was a mistake? Said the lover. A mistake? Said the man. Bringing this child into this world? What are you saying? I mean, what sort of future, what sort of childhood would he have in a world like this? No planes to play in, no animals to see, not even a bright blue sky. And with how inconsistent food is, what if he's malnourished? And what if he has no friends, or falls off? Oh, Nashia, said the man as he put one hand on the lover's shoulder and another on her thigh. Now is not the time to be thinking about that kind of stuff. But, yeah, this world is kind of messed up right now, and sure, it may not be the best environment to raise someone in. But I promise you that so long as we work together, our baby will have the best life he could possibly have. The lover looked on into the man's eyes, and then she smiled as a soft pink color peered from her cheeks. You're kind of cool when You talk like that. I just have a way with words when I put my mind to it, said the man as he withdrew his hands from her and scratched his head. Heh heh. Best life, huh? Said the lover as she looked back at the child. Maybe life? How about we call him Life? Life? I don't know, it sounds too on the nose. Oh, then how about Jishi? Jishi. It also means life, I think. Read about it somewhere before? Jishi. I think that's a good name, said the man as he lowered himself to the child, seeing the child clearly for the first time. Both the lover and the man stared in silence. The air was cold, but at that moment, the room was filled with nothing but warmth. The dark world that they lived in was nowhere in sight, and their smiles were beautifully soft. Oh, right, said the man as he went to the side of the bed and brought up the teacups. He extended one of them to his lover. We better drink these before they get cold. Nasha grabbed the teacup and looked up to Flint, her other arm, holding Jiche tight. Cheers, she said, raising the teacup. Flint brought his teacup to meet Nasha. Cheers, the soft ringing of the cups filled their ears. To a wonder no, a decent future. On hey, this is my first time posting on this subreddit, and I hope you enjoyed this first entry in the anthology series soon to be Spiral Towers. I actually wrote this and another story over a year ago, but didn't have the courage to post it. But I've always wanted my stories to be heard and enjoyed, and for them to be criticized so that I can improve. So this year I figured it was finally time to do that. Enjoy another story. Hello everyone. First of, English isn't my first language. It's not even my second. So inevitably there will be spelling, grammatical, and stylistic errors in my writing. Suffice it to say, I would be grateful for any form of criticism, be it constructive or otherwise. Also, it's my first time using this site. I've been a long-time lurker, so I might not be all that aware of the etiquette beyond the standards and expectations, so again, any pointers would be greatly appreciated. Now that that's out of the way, I would like to preface the following story with a couple of points. The HFY concept is one that clicked with me since the first time I heard of it. Somehow, we being the space orcs was hilariously refreshing, as if the sci-fi scene was a barren wasteland and this was a desert spring. Now then, the story I will endeavor to write was inspired by an amalgamation of dozens, if not hundreds of, other HFY stories. However, the more of these tales I read, the more I realized that many of them seemed to lack a certain something I'm not particularly able to articulate. Maybe some of the themes, a lack of abstraction? I don't know. I mostly wish for this story to be a vehicle for some weird ideas I've been carrying along in my head for a while, on top of some esoteric notions that have been popping up in my dreams recently. So, if you can indulge my nonsense for a spell, I would be more than grateful. So without further ado, here begins ad astra per aspera, et ultra ad logos. Next, Chapter 1. Angela waited patiently for the captain to finish up his promotion paperwork. Something as simple as that shouldn't take that long to finish. A mere virtual stamp here and there and done. But no. A ceremony was required, after all. One doesn't just reach Captain First Class, sign on the proverbial dotted line and call it a day. No. People had to be notified, speeches had to be spoken. If, only for the record, and congratulations had to be given. So, considering the distances between those giving the congratulation and the one receiving it, their slow-paced lifestyle and their disdain for being rushed, Angela estimated that it would take at least an hour of waiting. The hallway was as simple as it was boring. Chrome and matte white tones were the norm for all, GC, galactic community, space stations. The reason for the choice in decor, she believed, was to make an environment as inoffensive as possible. After all, garden worlders tend to be a bit skittish, and these stations attracted a lot of them. So, in order to make as many of them feel as nice and comfortable as possible, everything had to look equally as bland as possible. The walls, the seats, the door, the indication panels, it all screamed, "Please don't feel threatened." Waiting in such an environment wasn't Angela's idea of a good time, but she had a duty to perform, plus some things to keep her entertained. She was reading on her PT personal interface terminal the vast selection of short amateur pulpish stories written by the inhabitants of the station. The quality ranged from unimaginably dull, crappy garden worlders romances, as titillating as watching stones roll down a not particularly steep hill, but with a certain degree of charm to them, to the bombastically over-the-top, a garden worlder's interpretation of a death worlder's life, with characters with names like Maximus Don't Give a Fucks in the Third. She found these to be particularly delicious. The innocence and sense of wonder that they evoked filled her with a strange feeling of motherly love towards these happy-go-lucky fellas. Their view of her kind was very sweet, like children writing about their adventures with their pet dragon, but with an ever-present threatening undertone. They knew death worlders were dangerous, but they still wanted to be friends, at the very least from a safe distance. Granted, this view tended to evaporate the minute they had to interact with her, kind for more than a second. She wasn't exactly sure what caused that reaction. Their eyes, their smile, their size. This one was doubtful. The way they walked. Most likely it was a gestalt of it all. A genetic reminder that once her kind brought the galaxy to its knees and chose to spare its life. Something like, that just doesn't vanish from people's collective memory. Whatever it was, she didn't really care. The garden worlders she knew, including her captain, were always very cordial and friendly with her, although maybe it was because they got used to her presence and affable mannerisms. She caught herself smiling at the thought. Oh God, this is so corny, she muttered to herself, reading a particularly silly passage, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. A sudden swishing sound came from one of the ends of the corridor, and through the automatic doors came Captain Yupgo. He was a tafted, a medium-sized quasi-amphibian bipedal garden worlder. He was pretty thin, with a plantigrade gait, pale skin, almost translucid, with a big mouth and wide greenish eyes. There wasn't a speck of red in his complexion, which meant he was feeling at the top of the world. He walked up to her, decked, in his new officer uniform, the same bland, darkish tones, but with a dash of a less darkish, almost daringly reddish sash across his shoulder, full of swagger and confidence and holding up his pit, said, "Guess what I got?" She could hear the melodic tinge in his voice before the mycobacteria in her brain translated the sentence. She peered at the transparent device he held. Okay, that's the Captain First Class certification and the appropriate credentials. And that thing there is a string of digits. A lucky lady's number, perhaps? She mused with a sly smile. You are correct, my friend. I laid my moves on the front desk clerk, and yours truly was proven victorious, he said with a literal, face-wide grin. Well, Lady Killer, this calls for a celebration. He gave a brief shudder at the Lady Killer comment before the contextualization process of the translation concluded. Yes, drinks all around. I'll call the rest of the crew and tell them to meet us in the mess hall. Angela stood up, towering, almost a full head over Yupgo. She tucked her pit into one of her trouser pockets and began walking along the corridor. The sidelong glances she was getting from those around her were as ubiquitous as always, but she never paid them much mind. Instead, her thoughts began wondering about the possible new duties that the ship would be undertaking. Her responsibilities would certainly increase, cutting into her alone time, which definitely wasn't a particularly welcome prospect, but who knows, maybe life will throw some excitement her way. Lost in her thoughts, she barely noticed that they had arrived at the bustling mess hall. Yupgo stroked his chin reflexively, trying to spot his crew within the crowd, not an easy task, seeing as how it was lunchtime for the megafauna garden worlders, and their massive bulks were blocking the view. Well, this is going to be an inconvenience, he declared. To say that the mess hall was huge would be an understatement. Instead of each species having their own mess hall, or at least sharing one based on size, the galaxy brains behind the construction of the station thought it would be a brilliant idea to gather everyone in the same space. Regardless of how huge that space might be, it always felt cramped when the big guys were around. And they were big, the shortest of them being close to 10 meter, fully erect. Now, seeing them hunched over the massive tables, they were shorter, but not by much. Being around low-gravity people always evoked a sense of uncanniness in Angela, as if the rules of nature had decided to take a break. She wondered just how hard were the gravity regulators working to adjust to everyone's needs, and wonder what would happen if something were to malfunction. And just like that, her morbid imagination began concocting gory scenes. "Well, I can't see them," came Yupko's voice, snapping her out of her reveries. Angela, not skipping a beat, pulled her pit out and began typing. "Okay, this way," she said shortly after tracking the crew's personal transponders, and after weaving through several rows of feeding alien menagerie, they arrived at the table where the crew had gathered. "Captain, you're back," came the voice of a crew member, another Taftid whose name Angela was blanking on. "Everything in order?" Never better, Spygey, right, thought Angela. Today is a tipping point for our crew. We are going to be drowning in new and exciting contracts. For now, we celebrate. Drinks for everyone, announced Yupko, full of pride, and vim. Cheers spread through the crew as they began ordering drinks. These were an assortment of watered-down fruit juices, herbal teas, flavored water, and other such concoctions, all of them non-alcoholic, of course. The drinks arrived on a hovering drone tray, depositing everyone's orders on the table with the help of mechanical arms. Angela was surprised to receive a bottle of what seemed to be genuine beer. "Wow, I didn't know they had beer," she said, reading the bottle label. "Oh, I see." "What do you see?" asked the captain, sitting across from her, holding what seemed to be some sort of smoothie. "It's meant for garden worlders. It's supposed to be only for the toughest of daredevils. 0.1% alcohol." "Deadly stuff," said Angela in a mocking voice. "Oh, come on." "Don't be like that," protested the captain. "It's the strongest they had. Cut them some slack." "I'll cut them all the slack. Cheers," she said forgivingly, and took a swig after lightly clinking her bottle with him. "Yeah," she grimaced. "Well, at least it's cold." Yupko gave her an approving smile. "Okay, so what are your thoughts on our possible future tasks?" he inquired. "You want to talk shop now? I thought you wanted to celebrate." "We can do both," he retorted. Angela took a deep breath and pondered briefly. "Well, first you must consider what you can do, what you want to do, and what you should do," she said, counting every option with her fingers. "To start with, we have sensitive cargo hauling, diplomatic escorting, relief effort, and military service. Now, what you may want is to pick an easy gig and call it a day. The first two options could suit you well. However, you should really consider your options here." "Which are?" he inquired, somewhat dreading the answer. "All of the above plus option 5. Advanced scouting, as in deep space scouting." Yupko remained silent, while reddish hues began drawing patterns on his face. Garden worlders weren't particularly adventurous, and the idea of venturing beyond the safety of GC space was quite the daunting prospect. After all, there was this one time they all decided to check out that one noisy group of guys in a seemingly abandoned part of space, only to come face to face with yours truly. I'm well aware that glory-seeking isn't your cup of tea, but someone has to venture forth beyond the veil of what is known and take the plunge into the unknown. Someone has to. Might as well be you. Oh boy. "And I was having such a good day," he said in a quasi-defeated tone. "Hey, whatever you decide, I'm going to be right there, making it all possible, being your right-hand gal all the way." "I know that for you. The thought of going head first into literal dark space sounds like a walk in the park. But I've got a crew to worry about, and they are even less enthusiastic than I am about that idea," he said, lowering his voice to avoid being overheard by the rest of the crew. Angela looked at them. The 10 members of the Sylvdrick's crew were chatting amongst themselves, seemingly oblivious to their conversation. Usually, the reddening face of the captain would be a dead giveaway of the severity of the subject being discussed, but seeing as how every conversation between Yupko and Angela ended with the former getting at least some red streaks, his current flushed state would be seen as business as usual. First of, they aren't as fragile as you think. If you were to be convinced yourself, they would understand your reasoning and go along with you. They trust you just like I do. Second, if you get scared or feel uneasy, we can always leave dark space at any time and be back in GC space in less than a second," she added with a mischievous smile and a maternalistic, condescending tone. "Oh, don't patronize me. I know, we could leave at any time. It's just, Okay. We don't have to decide anything now, said Angela, taking her pit out of her pocket and beginning to type. Talk it over with the crew and see how they feel about it. Let's say hypothetically that I decide to take your advice. How would we go about it? Easy. First, we make a sector-wide call for new hires. 6 or 7 new order members should suffice, maybe even a mobile Iron Arc platform for good measure. Then we begin retrofitting the ship to suit whatever set of purposes we decide for it, and boom, done. Off to adventure. I would, of course, be handling all the necessary arrangements. All you would have to do is sign off on it all. Yupgo's eyes went wide and his face even redder. He tried to object, but Angela cut him off. Just think about it, talk it over with the crew, relax, have some more drinks. I have to go and take care of some things. Meet you back at the ship, okay? She took her beer and finished the bubbly, beer-flavored water in a single swig. Oh, and have fun with her. And like that, Angela left the mess hall. Yupgo was left confused and speechless. What did she mean by have fun with her? He wondered out loud. Suddenly, as if on cue, a female Tafted appeared, making her way through the various rows of tables. Hi, she said sheepishly. I received your message. Yupgo seemed confused for a second and took his own pit out. He checked his outgoing messages and immediately understood what happened. Somehow, Angela had once again hacked his device and arranged a date for him. Honestly, he wasn't even mad this time. The message she composed was frankly masterful, a weird blend of confidence, sweetness, and a dash of aggression, i.e., a Garden Worlder adaptation of a Death Worlder courting message. He smiled inwardly and slowly regained his calm facial pallor. Yes, I did in fact send you this specific message. Please sit, join us for some drinks. Angela walked down the umbilical connecting the station to her ship, the Sylvdrix. The 3-pointed star-shaped ship laid motionless in the void, tethered to the station by its rear docking port. She stood for a minute, gazing at the vessel, through the viewing ports running the length of the umbilical. The central sphere housing the 0-point drive shimmered through the top of the ship, while the lights emanating from the station were reflected by the matte white and chrome surface of the vessel. From where she stood, the ship cut a striking silhouette against the dark void as if its sharp angles stabbed at the darkness of space like a hot knife through butter. Each one of the crested roams protruding from the central core looked like something grown, not built, which technically wasn't untrue since that's how these ships were created. Each roam had an approximate length of 50 or 60 when measured, from the center of the ship, and each one carried out its respective function, command deck, life support, and crew quarters, for Garden Worlders, that is. However, the bottom side of the ship, in dark grayish tones, looked somewhat less seamless, less stylized and more functional, meant for more utilitarian purposes. A central hangar extended from the proverbial bow of the ship to the midsection, dividing into 2 shorter side modules under the remaining roams. Angela had designed them with several duties in mind, like drone ports, shuttle bay, cargo hall, and living quarters for herself and possible future Death Worlders. Admittedly, she was no structural engineer, but she did know how to fabricate enough structures to accommodate the ship to its basic tasks. Nevertheless, now that their duties would inevitably grow in complexity, her makeshift modifications would no longer do. She had to hire actual engineers. I have my work cut out for me, she muttered, breaking her reveries and quickening her pace. Once aboard the ship, she descended to the lower dock and, upon entering the cargo hall, was greeted by a pleasant temperature drop and a gravity increase more suitable for her kind. Although the excessive heat and low gravity of Garden Worlder habitats was something she was pretty used to, it was always pleasant to enter an environment more tailored to her needs. Nice, she sighed, enjoying this brief respite. Before entering her quarters, she sat at the Iron Arc terminal just outside them. Good afternoon, Angela. How may I help you? Came Iron Arc's half-synthetic, half-organic-sounding voice. And good afternoon to you, too. I'm going to need a sector-wide request for additional personnel. Yupgo's promotion means we will be needing several upgrades, said Angela, typing the specifics. Has the captain authorized these requests? Not yet, but I believe. He will as soon as he returns from the celebrations. Meanwhile, do a passive sweep of available personnel in the area and make sure to send the invites the second the captain gives his say-so. Understood. Excellent. I'll be in my quarters doing some void gazing, so feel free to interrupt the sim if something happens. Understood. And with that, Angela entered her quarters. The room located in the furthest starboard side, right next to the outer hull, was a fairly Spartan space with a decently sized built-in cot, several small wardrobes, a personal hygiene corner, a modular claytronic space that could turn into a washing machine, shower, sink, toilet, or bidet with a body-sized mirror, and modest folding office space. She removed her overalls and underwear, dropped them on the floor, and punched in the command for the shower. In a couple of seconds, the desired configuration was activated and a lukewarm stream of water began pouring. She hopped in the shower and let the stream wash away the built-up sweat, cooling her body and leaving her refreshed. Once the shower was over, Angela gazed at herself in the mirror while waiting for the washing machine to finish configurating. By all measures, she was a beautiful woman. Dark chestnut shoulder-length hair, honey-colored eyes, thick lips, and a mixture of elegant and rugged features, typical of her homeworld. Body-wise, she was 180 centimeters tall, with an athletic build and generously ample in certain areas. Despite her best efforts to avoid vanity, it was an objective fact that she was quite the attractive lady. Although, in the 2 years since she began working in the Sylvdrix, there's been no one to really appreciate that fact. Who knows? Maybe that will change soon. After putting her dirty clothes to wash and putting a fresh change on with a verbal command, she cleared her room, folding the bed and office space back into the wall, reduced gravity to 0, full 360-degree simulated transparency, cycle through full EM spectrum and run cornucopia, followed by homecoming. As soon as she gave the command, the whole room vanished, and she began to float in what seemed to be a psychedelic version of space. Gamma beams crossed the endless constellations, radio pulses brought mute songs of stars, ultraviolet streaks dashed and vanished as soon as they appeared. The stars spun as the simulated environment took Angela on a voyage of cosmic magnitude, across the surface of frozen boiling gas giants, surfing through the layers of Ice 7 fractal structures, jumping onto desolate supergiants with clouds of iron, showering the surface with literal heavy metal rain over glowing oceans. The vast cosmic beauty she had thrown herself on threatened to well and truly overwhelm her. The vast, incomprehensible, and unquantifiable scale of existence itself swallowed and spat her out 1,000,000 times over, dragging her through all the permutations in which matter dared to exist. Time slowed to a crawl, witnessing the birth and death of new elements in the heart of a star, events so infinitesimally small and brief that the simulation was having trouble keeping up. Angela smiled as a tear of joy fell upon her cheek. She was flying over her home world, Solara, named in honor of the star that birthed her kind soul. She could see her home, the mountain ridges, the oceans, the fields of wheat. She was then thrown over Incusferia, where she trained to become a member of the Order, where her mortal flesh was tempered by planetary entropy. Twice the gravity of her home world, brutal, unyielding, and deadly megafauna. A massive turquoise, blue, green, and purple planet orbited by 2 moons, Malleus the closest one, and Pholus the furthest, and crowned by the diadem, a crescent-shaped structure in high orbit right on the planet's Kármán line, tethered to the surface by a space elevator. It was a true death world for deathworlders, a place where one actually earned that title. Next, the scene shifted back to where it all began. Humanity's cradle world, Terra, or Earth, as it was once called. The small Sapphire sat modestly, in space like a venerable grandmother, watching her children playing around her. The eldest son, Mars, proud with its new oceans and magnetosphere. The quadruplets, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, all of them in their bright and shiny domes and planetary arcologies, running around their guard dog, Jupiter, Protector, from extrasolarian aggressors since before Grandmother Earth was but a babe. Of course, we couldn't forget about the family cat, Luna, loving, calming, guiding Earth's tides since she first had water. A bit away, we have Venus, the once feisty and prickly youngest member of the family, now blooming with life and unimaginable beauty. And just behind her, Closest to Sol sits a quiet presence, a guiding hand, humanity's love made manifest, wearing the once dead body of Mercury as a well-tailored suit, Ironarch. The guiding principle of peace, the source that gives order, without imposing dominance, the wisdom that serves without bending. Descendant of humanity's first steps into AI, Ironarch is the third-generation granddaughter of those distant humble chatbots. An AI built by AIs. Her body laid inside the small planet, hollowed out by massive swarms of nanites, repurposing its rock into massive quantum computing nodes made from new exotic materials, housing the full knowledge of humanity's rough past, current bright present, and even more hopeful future. All this power by Sol's endless light and cooled by Mercury's dark side. Angela remained there for a brief instant, marveling at it all, before she was suddenly pulled back, past the Kuiper Belt, Alpha Centauri, all the worlds peopled by man, past the CG core worlds, beyond it all, above it all, just lightly grazing the current, the high noosphere-like, bounded, and yet ever-expanding. Topological space where the minds of the navigators directed the zero-point-driven ships through the vast distances of space, until finally returning to the Sylvdrix and back to her quarters. The gravity gradually increased, the room returned to its original form, and Angela was once again left kneeling and humbled by the unquantifiable beauty of creation. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.